Afghanistan, where the Taliban seized the country's second-largest city of Kandahar overnight. Militants have taken control of 15 provincial capitals in just the past week, and they're closing in on the country's capital of Kabul. Now the Biden administration is sending more troops in to get Americans out, just 2.5 weeks before the scheduled withdrawal of all U.S. troops. Senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell has the latest. Hi, Ian.
Diane, the collapse of large parts of Afghanistan has been bewildering, but this U.S. emergency evacuation is going to be seen by many as a stunning admission of failure and a signal for anyone in Afghanistan who can get out to do so now.
This morning, Afghanistan reeling as around 3,000 U.S. troops set to deploy back into Afghanistan to help an emergency evacuation of some embassy staff and others out of Kabul as the Taliban's grip around the country tightens. With up to 3,500 troops to be stationed in Kuwait on standby, officials refusing to call the deployment a combat mission or an evacuation.
Our job here now with this additional plus-up is to help facilitate the safe movement of civilian personnel out of Afghanistan.
This as the Taliban take key southern strongholds overnight. The country's second-largest city of Kandahar fell after heavy fighting, the government releasing video of some of the clashes. And the key southern city of Lashkargah was toppled this morning. In just 1 week, they've taken at least 15 provincial capitals, including most of its major cities. This video, released by the Taliban, purport to show their forces taking key strategic sites. One shows fighters at police headquarters in Herat, the country's third-largest city. The group also overtaking Ghazni, a key location on the road to Kabul. Most Afghan forces being overrun, either surrendering or defecting. Some fear the Taliban could take the country's capital in just weeks, possibly by the 20th anniversary of the September the 11th terrorist attacks.
Who would have possibly thought that 20 years on, this is where we would be ending up.
In greatest fear are those who stand to lose the most, the women of Afghanistan, a generation of girls who grew up with access to education and rights, now fearful the Taliban will once again take all of that away.
They know that everything that they know and they have gained with lots of blood and sweat and tears is at the verge of shattering should the Taliban come back to power.
Diane, there's now a climate of fear and dread in Afghanistan, and I want to share this message sent to one of our colleagues from an Afghan who worked as an interpreter for U.S. Special Forces. He wrote this yesterday, saying, "Cities are falling one by one. Kabul is next. If they don't evacuate us, there'll be a slaughter. I have no idea what to do. I need help to leave the country, or I will die." Diane?
Sad words there. Senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell, thank you. And let's bring in ABC News senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez for more on this. Louis, any chance the U.S. reverses this plan for all of the troops to withdraw by the end of August, given how quickly the Taliban is advancing right now?
Diane, we have not heard that is in the works at all. If anything, the Pentagon is backing fully the president's order that all U.S. troops will withdraw from Afghanistan by the end of August. That was amended to, earlier it had been September 11th. Now, then it was changed to the end of August. The irony here is that as we took out most of those 2,500 troops very, very quickly in the month of June and early July, now we're rushing back 3,000 troops straight into Kabul to protect and defend that airport just so that we can evacuate these American diplomats. Not all of them. They're leaving behind a core group at the embassy, but a significant number. And then as well, the tens of thousands of Afghan interpreters who worked with the U.S. military over the last 2 decades, along with their families. But as far as I can hear, there are no plans in the works right now, unless the president reverses himself. But as of last night, I had not heard of anything in the works in terms of reversing the decision to pull them out and to keep them there.
Now, the Pentagon is not calling this an evacuation, saying it's a drawdown of most staff at the Kabul embassy. They're also not calling this a combat mission. What do you take with the language that's being used to describe this mission and not describe this mission?
Well, there's a reason they're using that language is because they want to be careful. They want to play the semantics here because the language of not describing this as a combat mission is accurate in a sense, but the fact is that these are troops that are going in there with body armor, they're going in there with their weapons, they're going in there with the right of self-defense, and they're going into an area that could very well soon be a hostile environment, which would lead to combat. They're not calling it an evacuation formally because when I asked that question of John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesman, yesterday directly, he said it's not an evacuation procedure, what they call here at the Pentagon a NEO, essentially because he said that we're not evacuating American civilians. Well, you are not evacuating American civilians. There aren't that many of them inside Kabul right now, but what you are evacuating is a significant number of the diplomatic personnel who worked at the U.S. Embassy, along with contractors, along with security personnel who also worked there. Playing a little games here, but the intent here is not to raise concerns, but I think you have to call it what it is.
And Louis, there's clearly a lot of anger and heartbreak among people in Afghanistan who in many cases feel abandoned by the Americans, as Ian has described with a lot of his reporting there. President Biden is receiving a lot of criticism here at home also for this decision. What is the alternative, though? Keeping troops there indefinitely? Walk us through what the options were for the president and what they are at this point.
Well, this was the option that President Biden inherited from President Trump, because about a year and a half ago, President Trump negotiated a deal with the Taliban where they would refrain from attacking U.S. forces for the year, and then after that, the U.S. would withdraw. That deadline was May 1st. President Biden adhered to that decision-making agreement, but what he said was, I'm going to delay the withdrawal of American troops. He said that the war in Afghanistan, the war against al-Qaeda, was over as far as he was concerned, because that had happened a long time ago. This is the conundrum when it comes to Afghanistan. Are you there to prevent a terrorism strike against the United States? Are you there to do that as well as help build a strong democracy, build modern institutions which are now at risk, or do you just engage in a full-on military battle? Those are the options that I think President Biden had to consider, and he determined that the war against al-Qaeda was over, and that if al-Qaeda did come back, that they could be contained with a counterterrorism strike from other areas where the U.S. could strike that. But I think the situation now is we've moved beyond that. Now you have to say, does the U.S. reassess? Again, I have not heard anything to that effect. And as we heard earlier this week when Stephanie Ramos asked President Biden if he regretted his decision, he said he had no regrets.
And we heard from President Biden as recently as July saying that the likelihood that the Taliban is going to take over the entire country is highly unlikely. How likely does that look now, Louis?
Well, Diane, I've got to tell you that what the president was citing was probably internal intelligence. We heard that there was an internal intelligence assessment that said that maybe 6 to 12 months is how long the Afghan government could hold out after a full U.S. withdrawal. That is, if the Taliban went full on. We now know that the Taliban went full force against the Afghan government and the military over the last 2 weeks, and that time frame obviously decelerated. Now, what we did see earlier this week was an assessment from U.S. military assessment that maybe within 1 to 2 months, Kabul might be feeling pressure, might be isolated. In 90 days, it could fall. We're looking at a much faster timeline right now if it continues on as it has this week.
All right. Louis Martinez from the Pentagon. We appreciate it, Louis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.